Good evening, everyone. By my clock, we are almost ready to start. Do we have all our members? We do have all our members. Okay, it is 6:30, so welcome everyone to this online hearing by the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. Bonsoir à tout le monde et bienvenue à cette rencontre du comité de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. And so this panel deals with, in great majority, minor variances and consent applications. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be chairing this meeting this evening. But I'd like to introduce my fellow panel members. So with me this evening is Mr. Scott Hindle, Mr. Colin White, Ms. Julia Markovich, and Ms. Kathleen Wallace. Also, we're not alone. We are well supported by a terrific team from the Committee of Adjustment staff. So with us tonight is our Deputy Secretary's Treasurer, who is Matthew Garnett. We have coordinators Cheryl Williams, Mandy Nguyen, and Emily Monette. So hello, everyone. Okay, we also have planning staff. So as usual, we have great support from Mr. Hodgins and Ms. Ramirez, and now also Ms. Young with regards to some of the forestry issues. So with that, I'd like to just point out that this session is being video conferenced and live streamed on YouTube. If you'd like to see either the agenda after this evening or the video, you are quite welcome to simply go to the city's website. Both of those products are there for you to access. Before we begin, a couple of issues surrounding development within the city. There's a number of things that the committee can't consider. So for example, aspects of the proposal that are not related to the relief that's being requested. So for example, we really do have to stay with whatever is listed in terms of the minor variances. And if height, for example, is not one, then we really do have to focus our comments on what is part of the application. We also don't talk about any noise issues, property maintenance, property values, that kind of thing. Or prosecution for illegal construction is also an area that we don't discuss or can't do anything about. We certainly will not entertain any adverse comments or negative comments about neighbors, agents, or applicants. And finally, we can't on the floor choose to add minor variance or to allow for greater relief for that minor variance. If that happens, we need to adjourn the item and simply put it down to a future meeting of the committee to allow for recirculation of the application at that point. So as part of the statutory public notification requirements, there needs to be a sign posted on the property and a statutory declaration filed. My understanding is, and the coordinator can correct me, but I believe we have no oaths that have come in ahead of the meeting. So I will be reading that into the record as we move along. Also, in terms of the hearing process, just to explain to you how things work, if this is the first time you've been joining us, the members essentially have a chance to review the applications quite in depth. In the file, in fact, all of the material that comes in prior to the hearing. So we have a chance to look at all that. So we've got a good idea of what the application is all about. That said, then, what happens is we normally call the agent or the owner down to present to us. If it's a fairly complex issue, now that we've been online, we tend to fast track some applications for which the applications are pretty straightforward and we're pretty sure we understand. And at that point, we go straight to questions. We have some of those applications tonight, and then we have some for which we will want to hear presentations. So we get the agent to provide us a presentation. Committee then asks questions with regards to anything that it may feel it needs clarification for. Once that's all done, we open up the public portion of the hearing. At that point, anybody who has an interest in the application is quite welcome to provide comments, their thoughts, or whatever they would like to say, either for or against on the applications. The committee can then actually choose to ask you questions if you're a speaker. And I don't have, I have one registered this evening. And if we can ask questions, and then we'll close the public portion down. As I said, I have one name. That doesn't mean this is the only person who can speak. Obviously, anybody can. If you do want to speak to the committee on an item, just raise your hand. We'll give you a moment so that we can bring you in so that you can actually converse with the panel. And then if you could just start with your name and with your municipal address. We're here to listen to you, so take your time. No issues there. We'll help you through the process if you want to have your say. That'd be great. Okay, so with that, once the committee's had the presentation, had clarification through questioning, what we do then is deliberate on the application or applications, as the case may be. If there's complexity, sometimes that takes a little bit of discussion. If not, it can be a straightforward rendering of an oral decision, and that decision can be either for, like, granting the application, be declining the application. We can decide to adjourn the application if, like we said, we find that there's an aspect missing to the application. And then we can reserve on an application if we feel we've heard a lot of new evidence brought to us by either the agent or members of the public. In that case, we can choose to close the hearing on that application, and then following the hearing this evening, we reconvene and we make a decision. We have a discussion and make a decision on those applications following that point. So once done, essentially what happens next is there's a formal written decision that is distributed following the hearing within 10 days of the hearing. And within that is more of the reasoning for the committee's decision. If you'd like a copy of that decision and aren't already, for whatever reason, on the list, please just make sure to reach out to committee staff and they'd be able to do that for you. All the decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period, during which time the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. All right, so that's essentially my opening comments. We have the next item is declaration of conflict of interest. So does any member here have a conflict in either one of the applications this evening, or on this panel or any other panels? So you'll start with Ms. Markovich.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I need to declare on items 1 and 2.
All right, thank you. Noted. That would be Sand Hill Road and 10th Line Road for the record.
That's correct, yes.
All right, thank you. Mr. White, saw your hand up as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to declare interest on an item on the panel 3 agenda. It's item number 1 for 4830 Stonecrest. I periodically do some work as a sub-consultant for the agent on that application.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. The next item of business is the adoption of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes to adopt this evening. So I'd like a motion to adopt the minutes of October 7th. Motion to adopt. Mr. Hindle, seconded by Mr. White. On the October 21st minutes, motion to adopt, Ms. Markovich, seconded by Mr. White. And on the minutes of January 13, motion to adopt, Ms. Willis, seconded, Mr. Hindle. Thank you very much. That's perfect. So with that, I think the next item is to move forward to the requests for adjournment. I only have one this evening, and it's for application number 5, 2487. I believe the agent, Mr. Hume, if you would like to join us and speak to that request for adjournment, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. We've received comments from city staff that we need to review, which may in all likelihood result in a different facade being brought forward for the project, which in turn may change the variances, which would require resubmission to the committee. That work is underway now to address those concerns, and therefore we'd request an adjournment to the March 17th meeting of the committee, if that's possible.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hume. I was in fact going to suggest the March 17th. We've already got quite a bit on the March 3rd in any event. Okay, any questions for Mr. Hume from the panel members on this request for adjournment? Okay. In the audience, anyone who wants to speak to this request for an adjournment, either for or against? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So with that, panel members, all those in favor of an adjournment to March 17th? Thank you. For the record, it's unanimous, and we'll see you in a month, Mr. Hume.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next applications that we're going to hear is in fact applications number 1 and 2, for which we have a conflict of interest. So Ms. Markovich, I'm going to ask you to, or the coordinator, to somehow make sure that you're not part of these discussions or can hear these discussions. That's great. Thank you. Okay. All right. On application number 1, we have 335 Sand Hill, and I'm looking for Mr. Winters. We have Mr. Winters with us.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm actually here in support of my colleague, Robert Tran, who will be doing a presentation tonight. So I'm going to, if it's okay, we'll turn the presentation over to him and I can jump in if there's any other questions and answers.
Fine. So Mr. Tran, if you could please put your video on.
There you go. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of this committee.
Good evening, Mr. Tran. So we've looked at this application in depth. We are familiar with what's happening with it. So we're going to essentially go directly to questions at this point from the committee. So no presentation. So with that, members of the committee, does anyone have anything that they'd like to ask about this application? Oh, and my apologies, Mr. Tran. Aha. No stat deck. So let me read through this. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that the sign was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you affirm that? Okay, great. Perfect. Okay, back to where we were. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so no questions that I can see from anyone on the application. I'm going to throw it out to, I don't have any speakers for this item, but I'm going to throw it out to the audience. Is there anyone who is attending this evening to speak to this application? And if you do want to speak to it either for or against, please just raise your hand. All right, I am not seeing anybody come forward at all on this. So before I call for a vote, I just want to ask Mr. Trent just a quick question. There's no other planning applications that are active right now that are related to this application?
There is a plan of subdivision that was approved by the City of Ottawa's rezoning applications as well for this development. But those are previously approved.
Are they completed? Are they? The only reason I ask is because the bottom of the notice says that the property is not subject of any other application under the Planning Act, and we tend to want to try to get that statement correct. So, am I to understand from you that there is an active plan of subdivision that affects this property and an active zoning?
Yeah.
Rezoning?
Yeah. So the rezoning was approved, and the plan of subdivision was approved as well. It just hasn't been registered yet. It's my understanding.
Is the zoning through the appeal period and in place now?
Yes, that is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, so the only thing is really the plan of subdivision then.
Yes.
All right. So can I ask you, just so that we can get the notice done correctly, is that you provide that file number to committee staff so that they can include it as
Absolutely.
part of the revisions to this.
I will do
Okay,
that,
I was
Madam
going to
Chair.
go to a vote, Mr. White, but
Madam Chair, I'm just surprised not to hear anything about a site plan application.
Fran, you want to speak to us about that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just 2 points. The first is I believe there's also an active planned condominium application ongoing. I don't know what the status of that is on the applicant's end, but I have noted that the subdivision and condo file numbers in the staff report, as well as the previous zoning bylaw amendment, just for committee staff's reference. And to answer Mr. White's question, yes, typically a plan unit development would trigger site plan control. However, in this case, it went through a plan of subdivision application, which would meet the same requirements. So under the site plan control bylaw, if it goes through a plan of subdivision alternatively, that suffices. So I hope that answers Mr. White's question.
Thank you.
In that case, we're going to, for the record, we're going to revise the notice to reflect the information provided by Mr. Hodgins in his planning report. With that, going to a vote. All those in favor of the application? All right. For the record, the application is granted unanimously by the 4 members in attendance. So I believe that's it. I don't know that there's anything else really that we need to discuss. There's no conditions. There's none of that. So thank you, Mr. Tran.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Have a nice evening. Application number 2, we're looking at 2165 10th Line Road. Mr. Church, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Church. So the committee has had a chance to look at this application, and we're not going to request a presentation, but I do need to read something to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly legible and visible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I affirm that to be true.
All right, thank you. So with that, committee, over to you. Looking for any questions for Mr. Church or Mr. Tremblay or Mr. White?
Madam Chair, I note there's been some discussion in the reports concerning the future of the Serrano Street extension that goes to one side of the unit that we're dealing with. I just wonder if there could be some clarification on that. There's discussion talks about transit way, access to transit way, or possible extension of the street. Is there anything definite on that?
So, Madam Chair, if I may, to answer the Mr. White's question, there is no definite answer on that right now. For the time being, Serrano Street is not going to be extended north of Prominence Way. It's going to remain as a landscaped corridor with the pathway. The decision on whether or not Serrano Street will be extended will come in the long-term future. So there's no imminent decision on that. We've been told that the possibility of that is unlikely, but it's still possible. But again, this is in the long-term future. It's in the city's hand with respect to that, but it's not a decision that will come anytime soon.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Church? All right, so Mr. Church, I just noticed, in fact, that we have a bit of a housekeeping amendment that we have to take care of. My understanding is that the reference should actually be to 2165 10th Line Road. Is that correct?
That is, we initially I thought that we would need to bring it up. We consulted with a lawyer, and we were told that we didn't need to worry about it because the notice also refers to 500 to 510 Prominence Way, which is the address of the block. So initially, I thought that we had to amend the notice. We've been told since then that we don't need to, unless the committee feels differently. We're happy to move forward with the existing notice.
Okay, it doesn't hold up your application in any way. It really is a housekeeping item.
Right.
If it is more correct that it's 2165, then we should probably make that change.
Sure. In that case, it is a little bit more correct. Yes.
Well, then we're going to do that. Thank you.
Sounds
Okay, so no questions from the committee that I can see. So it's time to go to the public at this point. I don't have, I believe, anyone on my speakers list. Just a minute. No, I don't have anybody from the public, but here's an opportunity. Anyone who may have an interest in this application, either for or against, please raise your hand and come forward. We'd be happy to hear from you. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised and to do that, so that's fine. Okay. All right, so committee, it's time for a decision on this then. And I guess the only other thing, Mr. Church, before we get too much further, same question to you as I had for number one in terms of the references to the application. And it says that it's not subject to any other current application under the Planning Act. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, Madam Chair.
Nothing else that we need to note in the notice in that regard. Okay.
No, the latest was that the subdivision was registered, but that was last fall. So we're all clear of any active applications.
Okay, sounds good. All right, committee, time for a vote. All those in favor? Okay, for the record, the application is granted unanimously, noting the absence of Ms. Markovich for conflict of interest. All right, I think we're good. I don't think there's anything else we need to talk about on the application. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have a good night.
Bye now. All right, we're going to jump to number 7, which is 771 Acacia Lane. Mr. Fiat, I think I'm getting that right. The agent. So we see you there.
Yes, you can see me? Okay.
Well, I can see your name and I can hear you, but we don't actually see you on video.
Oh, start a video. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair. My apologies for technical difficulties. This is my first time in this format, so my apologies for any.
No worries. We've been at this for almost unbelievably coming up to a year soon. So and it wasn't all a bed of roses to start with, although we did pretty well, I think. But that's it. No worries. I do have something to read to you, though, before we get going.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I do affirm.
All right, thank you. Next item we have here is really another housekeeping matter on your application. So I'm going to read some changes to you, and then I'm going to need you to confirm or correct as the case may be. So for variance A, we've got a statement that says to permit an increased floor space index of, and it reads 0.7, but it should be 0.49, which is not 622.5 square meters, but 435.3 square meters, pardon me. Whereas the bylaw permits a maximum FSI of 0.35. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. This, just to give a little bit of background, this I was corrected by the planner, Ms. Lucy Ramirez, that there is an exception in the calculation of the actual building area. I have incorrectly included the basement area in my original application, and I was advised that basement is actually not part of it. So the number has been lowered because we simply did not have to include the basement.
Okay, I see that because we've got an itemization. I see the basement has been
Yes.
has been deleted from that. All right, so no presentation needed. The committee's had a chance to look at this in depth. Any questions, clarifications, anything needed here? All right, I'm not seeing any questions from the committee. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to the public hearing portion. Don't have anyone on my list to speak to this application. So now's your chance. If you'd like to address the committee either for or against this application, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. So with that, then committee need a decision from you. All those in favor of the application? All right, for the record, the application is granted unanimously. And with that, Mr. Fiat, I don't believe we have anything else that we need to discuss. Any questions from you?
No, not really. That's I appreciate you taking time to review this, and thank you very much for your decision.
All right, thanks so much and have yourself a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're on to applications for which we do want to hear presentations. So I'll start with 22 Kemp Drive, looking for Mr. Segredo. This is for both a consent application and an application for minor variance. So we're considering two applications. Good evening, Mr. Segredo.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
To read something to you.
Sure.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first on the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly legible and visible for the entirety of that time? Do you swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear it to be true.
All right, thank you. Okay, so Mr. Segredo, we do want a brief presentation from you,
Sure.
if you could, on both the consent and on the minor variances.
Sure. If we can go to the slide, I think there's slides of this. This is the subject property, which is at 22 Kemp. There's an existing single family dwelling on it. The lot is approximately 116 feet frontage and about 185 feet or so in depth. What my client would like to do is, when you're looking at this photograph, is sever it in half in order to develop the property and possibly construct a two-story single-family dwelling for a family member. You can clearly see the red outline that we have there. That is the subject lot that we're hoping to sever. If you can go to another slide. That's the site plan. Originally, what we had was the garage on the east side of the property, which was next to the trees. Unfortunately, what we did was we put the garage on that side, but we did change it to the west side in order to protect those trees in the front. We did get a tree report on it, and the tree closest to the street will remain. The tree closest to the house will be removed, and there is an additional tree in the back. I think what the arborist said that can be removed because it wasn't very well. The house is just a very simple 2,400 square foot home. The variances that I am requesting this today are basically for lot width and for a side yard reduction. When you're looking at part 1 and 2, the existing single family dwelling, the variance that I'm asking for is to permit the reduced lot width to 17.48 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 20 meters. And I'm also asking to have a side yard reduction to a variance B to a 1.21 meters, whereas the bylaw would require a minimum total side yard of 2 meters, but you can clearly see on the opposite side, we have over almost 4 meters, 3.92, so we exceed the side yard setback. With respect to the severed portion, variance C, again, the lot width to reduce the lot width to 17.88 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 20 meters. Can we go to the lot fabric slide? There we go. So the subject property you can clearly see is the one in red or in pink. There have been a number of severances that have been in the area, which are very similar to what we're doing, that have been approved by this committee about a year or so ago. You can clearly see the blue lots are all similar lots in nature to what we're doing, and the yellow lots are somewhat similar, but in a little bit of a different zone with reduced lot widths as well. But there is a fair amount of development that is happening in this area, which is similar to what we're proposing. I think I have a few photographs of the houses as well that have been severed and built in the area. This is a portion of a lot that was approved not too long ago, number 8A Kemp, which has a 17.91 meter. Go to the next slide. Here again on Elma, which is just the street right in behind us, you can clearly see that that was a 15.49 meter frontage. And there may be a few more. There's a few more examples on this property here as well, and a couple of more examples there in this particular area. So you can clearly see that there is activity in this neighborhood, and it's not out of character what we're proposing today in front of this committee. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Segreto? Mr. White.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question to staff. Could we get some clarification on the servicing situation in that community? Are these fully serviced lots, or are they partially serviced? What's the situation? And also a secondary question, some concerns have been brought up by the community with respect to stormwater management in the area. I'm wondering if there's been any comprehensive look at the impact of infill development in terms of the stormwater management on a sort of community-wide basis.
Thank you, Mr. White. Through you, Madam Chair. This area is serviced by water and wastewater services. There is no stormwater services, as noted in a couple of the comments. The city staff are aware of rear yard drainage issues specifically in this neighborhood. It has been looked at on site, and there's been several discussions about the drainage issues in this area. In terms of the implications of infill development specifically, I'm not sure what the discussion was, or if there was ever a final report, but it has been looked at, and infrastructure staff are aware of it. We have clarified through request condition of approval number 4 what will be required in terms of the grading and drainage for this site. Again, we are aware there's some rear yard drainage concerns, and through the severance application, we will want to make sure that the drainage is being improved on the site and there's no runoff issues onto abutting properties. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Hindle?
I just had a question in relation to condition number 3. There was a note of requiring a noise attenuation study. Is that related to proximity to the airport, or what's that stemming from?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct. It is in relation to the airport proximity. It's in the airport vicinity development zone and the NEF 24 contour line, so it's related to the airport noise.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Hindle, did you want to propose removing that condition, or are you satisfied in order to keep it, or what were you thinking?
Well, I think I was thinking originally that often we see the option of doing either the study or just putting notices on title. I just want to confirm in this case that it sounds like it's an official plan requirement. Mr. Rogers?
Thank you. Yes, that's correct. For the airport noise, we don't have the alternative notice on title like we do for roadway traffic. So in this case, it is a official plan requirement for the noise study.
Right, because I could swear we've done that before, where we've done the notice on title for aircraft noise issues. Am I wrong about that? Yeah, okay.
We've at least stepped in, I think, and overridden it. Yes.
I think so. I think so. And I guess, so Mr. Hodgin, just on that again, can you tell me what noise contour is within at this point?
The NEF 25 contour line, noise contour line.
We'll come back to that maybe. Okay, any other questions from the panel? Mr. Segreto, I do have one question for you. In your report, you do include a section on consultation, but the consultation really is more in relation to consultation with city staff. Can you tell me a little bit about how you undertook some community consultation in this regard?
What I did was the owner, I believe that the owner had meetings with one or two of the neighbors. They did go to the owner's house. He did call me, Mr. Cosmo Rapace, and he did say that a couple of the neighbors didn't have any objections to the severance, but they did have some concerns with respect to the lot grading and drainage. And they were just concerned about that. And what we did here in the office is what we contacted Mr. TL Mack of TL Mack Engineering, and we realized that there would be some issues with the drainage and that we would address those concerns as well. But I know that the homeowner did have some talks with a couple of the neighbors, from what I understand.
So, Mr. Segreto, does that mean that you've had to revise your grading and drainage plans? Like, are you at that point? What are you?
No, Mr. TL Mack, Tony Mack is working them on it as we speak. And due to the fact of protecting the trees, what we did do is we did flip the house over to the other side and put the garage on the opposite side in order to protect the trees and then have servicing off to the one side.
All right, so am I hearing then through that explanation that the grading and drainage issues have been addressed as a result of the work from Mr. Mack?
They're doing them as we speak now. And normally what I'm trying to do now in these applications that I'm taking to the committee with severances is I'm trying to get a preliminary grading plan, a servicing plan, so people, because these trees are always in effect. So we are trying to get a preliminary grading plan, servicing plan, and in addition to that, all these tree reports that we're adding to our files as well, because we've had issues in the past in Blossom Park and everywhere else with these trees. So at least we could be more informative to the public and to the committee.
All right, thank you for that explanation. All right, any other questions from the panel before I turn it over to the public? All right, we do have a speaker that is registered to address the committee. And I see that Ms. Kemp, you're here, Ms. Maureen Kemp, if you would come forward at this point. You can just unmute and put yourself on video.
It should be there.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello?
Hear you. We just can't see you. We can't see you.
Well, I'm not very good at, in fact, I've never done this before, so.
That's okay. Did you?
We're having trouble with, I'm trying to get the video going, but we're having trouble with the video. Is there any way we can do this without the video?
Oh yeah, of course you can. I just thought if you could do it, then it would be great. It would be nice to see you, but that's all right. It doesn't change anything really. So, Ms. Kemp, Mr. Kemp, could you please just for the record give us what your municipal address is?
I'm at 18 Kemp Drive, Gloucester, Ontario.
All right, thank you. And with that, the floor is yours, please. Go ahead.
You want to say
I
anything?
beg your pardon?
You've got the floor if you want.
Yes.
this came as a surprise to see or hear that, get the reply, the notice from you that the severance was going through, because I have not spoken with my neighbor, rather my neighbor has not spoken with me about it. But I'm watching things closely. I'm very concerned about drainage and how high the new house is going to be, how it's going to affect me, because it's very, very close to my property line. I think there's about 2 feet between us.
Okay, so the variances that the applicant is looking for, I don't believe, I'll just go through them with you. One is for a reduced lot width. The other is for a reduced, well, 2 reduced lot widths for both the parcel that exists and the parcel that's being created. And then also there is a variance to an interior side yard. So there's no request for a variance on the height. So Mr. Segretto's plans therefore meet the requirements, like the maximum height requirements of the zoning bylaw.
Can I be reassured that the new house will not be higher, much higher than I am?
It's
than my property.
Yeah,
I'd like reassurance on.
Yeah, it's Jeff Martin. I live on the next street over on 16 Robert Kemp Street, and I'm Maureen's son-in-law. The issue is the adding fill to the lot to raise the lot height with a 2-meter variance with a high lot height. When you slope the property down, there's no room for the water to go but on the neighboring properties. That is the issue. So I know it's within the rules of the committee. However, the committee is, I'm not sure if they're aware of the fill that's being added to the lot or will be added to the lot to raise the height of the lot. Because there's already been fill added to raise the height of the lot from the original level that it used to be. So when they put the new house in, they're going to add fill to bring the height of the lot up. And that will create an issue potentially with stormwater runoff onto the adjacent property, both Maureen's house and the properties behind.
So just to put your mind at ease a little bit here, when the application comes in with the minor variances that are being requested, it is intended to be at the full construction, completed construction state. So in other words, if we were to approve this application, or both applications in this case, they're tied to the plans. If Mr. Segretto's client chooses to vary additionally the topography on the site so that in fact there is an increase in the height that's, if they vary anything, it's because we're tying this to plans. At the end of the day, if there's any changes to what's being proposed, they have to come back to the committee one way or the other. So I think I can give you comfort on that level. I can't say that, I can't comment too much about the difference in height between what's being proposed and Ms. Kemp's house. Maybe Mr. Segretto, you can tell us what the finished elevation is on the height. But as long as the proposal is within the requirements of the zoning bylaw, then that issue doesn't need to come forward to this committee. We have no reason to get involved in trying to approve something like that because it's not before us, it's not part of the application. So Mr. Segretto, can you just tell us then what the height of
the height of the building is 8.28 meters or 27 feet, which is your normal ground floor height, which is 9 foot 1 inch. And on our second floor, it will be 8 feet. And it's just coming out of the ground as it normally does when we normally do an excavation. So we're well within our height. We're not exceeding our height at all. There is a gradual slope from the street, which is going downwards towards the east. What I'd like to do is I'd like to correct the neighbor next door. She mentioned that it was a 2 foot setback. It's actually a 2 meter setback from her side, not 2 feet. So there's no misunderstanding there, which is 6.5 feet. And my understanding is that if there will be some sort of a retaining wall, the engineer we'll put a little retaining wall on that side to make sure that none of the earth will go towards that, towards her side. It would be all self-contained. In addition to that, when you're looking at this house, it's not a very big house. You can clearly see on the site plan, if they put it up, you can see it. It's a much smaller house. And from the back of the house, you can clearly see that there's almost 100 feet. There's 92 feet of distance from the back corner of the house to the back property of the line. So a lot of that water is going to be designed by the engineer, so he'll be able to bring it outwards towards the street and out towards the ditches in the front. That would be my understanding. And obviously with the building permit, once a building permit is issued, it will not be approved without getting the engineer to make sure that everything is self-contained on this property.
All right, thank you, Mr. Segreto. Mr. White, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe the concern is with respect to potential drainage issues. And I think that the condition that's been recommended by staff is pretty specific in terms of protecting the adjacent properties, and that it advises that the grade control and drainage plan shall delineate existing and proposed grades, demonstrate that existing drainage conditions will be improved upon. So in other words, if there's a problem there now, the intent is that they would be rectified. And then finally, demonstrate that all drainage will be directed to the right of way and will not be directed towards neighboring property. So I think if our engineers are doing their job, and obviously the conditions are very specific, the drainage issue that may exist today is not going to exist upon development of these lands, given that condition is being imposed by, or we're being recommended to impose that as a condition.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. It's always helpful to think through some of these conditions and what the intent is and how well it does or is intended to protect neighbors in these situations.
Yeah.
So,
Madam Chair, if I could just comment on that last statement. I'm having infills going in behind my property right now, which is essentially across the street from this one. And the impact from the raising of the lot and the drainage is an issue on our property. And we don't get any traction from the city. It seems very little traction at this level. And I'm even questioning whether they've even had plans to do anything, how these things got approved. So we're sort of at a, we know we're at a disadvantage here, but we want this heard at this committee. So potentially this committee could send recommendations back to the city staff from the planning section, so they could at least hear the problems that original homeowners are facing here with infills, and at least note that so it could go back to the planning committee so they address the drainage problem seriously here. Thank you.
all right, that's a good point. And we do try to do that when we see that there are communities that seem to have these underlying concerns that are not within our jurisdiction, but that perhaps we can raise to planning staff's attention. So thank you. I think that's noted. If I could make sure that is part of the record so that we can bring that back around the next time we have a chance to meet with planning staff on a variety of issues. We'll raise that one. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, anyone else in the audience want to speak either for or against this application? All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point. So on the application so before we go to the vote, Mr. Segreto, there are a number of conditions. You're familiar with them, and no changes are being proposed from your end. You're good?
Yeah, I'm good. There's 4 conditions, basically cash in lieu, the servicing plan, the noise study for the airport, and obviously the grading and drainage to meet all the conditions that are spelled out here in the list of conditions.
Behind Ottawa comment too. Are you aware of that one? You looked at it?
I did. I looked at it. So I think we're going to be okay with that as well. There's a clearance, I guess, that they want. But I've got it in front of me here.
About the underground plant relocate?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. As long as you're aware. So with that, then we're going to go to a vote on the application for consent. All those in favor? All right. The application for consent is granted unanimously by the committee. On the application for minor variances, all those in favor? Okay. Again, for the record, the application is granted unanimously. And with that, Mr. Segreto, I think we've talked about the elements that we need to talk about. Anything else from your end, or are we good?
I'm fine, Madam Chair. I'm fine.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening, Mr. Segreto.
Thank you very much, you too.
All right, we're on to 1574 Rosabella, looking for Ms. Porcari. Or Mr. Sciarello.
Hi, Madam Chair. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So you're going to be...
I will be presenting on behalf of Ms. Porcari tonight.
All right, so do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted on the subject property or the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that the sign was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm that is true.
All right, thank you. So then, Mr. Shrillo, I am going to ask you to, oh, and wait, before we go that far, I'm going to get you to do a presentation, but we have a housekeeping item that we want to take care of here. We've got variance A reads to permit a reduced rear yard setback of 5.99 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 7 meters. And then we're striking the rest of that variance, 28%. So the portion being struck is 28% of the lot depth, which must comprise of at least 25% of the lot area, which in this case is 88.53 meters. So we're striking that from the application. And then on variance C, to permit an increased driveway width of 5.92 meters, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum driveway width of 5.5 meters.
Correct.
Are you, okay, good. For the record, we've got that done. All right. With that, Mr. Shrillo, you can proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, on behalf of the owners of the property at 1574 Rosabella, have filed a minor variance application for a reduced rear yard and corner yard setback, as well as increased driveway width for a proposed 2-story detached dwelling. Just for some context on the property, the subject site is located in the Blossom Park community on the south side of Rosabella Avenue and west side of Mavis Street. The subject site is a corner lot with 15.24 meters of frontage on Rosabella Avenue and 30.5 meter of lot depth and a lot area of 4.6482 meters. The lot size is consistent with the lot fabric in the neighborhood, which is mainly characterized by 50-foot by 100-foot lots that contain 1- and 2-story single-family dwellings with double-car driveway. The site is currently vacant, unoccupied land that was part of a previously approved consent application on June 14, 2019. With respect to the rear yard setback variance, the intent of the rear yard setback provisions is to ensure that a sufficient amount of amenity area is provided on the property, to ensure consistent setbacks are provided in the neighborhood, and to protect against any adverse impacts on neighboring properties. The proposed reduction is minor in nature, and a sufficient amount of amenity area is provided on the site in the rear and corner side yards. If I can ask the committee coordinator to show diagram 1, which I had previously sent, I could speak to that. Given the design of the building, the reduced setback will not have undue adverse impacts on the neighboring properties to the south and the abutting property at 1572 Rosabella Avenue. I'm not sure if the committee coordinator has diagram 1 that I previously sent.
Sometimes it takes a minute or two to find the material.
No problem. I can continue. At the furthest wall of the property. The variance is 3 feet 4 inches, and the remainder is 7 inches from the 7-meter setback. The new walls of the house are consistent with what was there with the previous home that was demolished back in 2019. It is also consistent with the surrounding homes. If the diagram was up, I would have been able to show you, but that's okay for the intent of this presentation. In regards to the reduced corner yard setback variance, we believe the 25 centimeter reduction is minor in nature and will have no impact on the streetscape. The reduction will not be noticeable to the eye and will not result into an encroachment into the corner site triangle and will not be out of character for the area. This reduction is similar in nature to the home just across the street at 1582 Rosabella Avenue. I have that in diagram 3 if the committee coordinators has a copy of that.
All right, so, okay. There we go.
So so you'll see across the street how the home at 1582 Rosabella, which is immediately across the street from our development, how it encroaches into the site triangle and into the side yard. Our proposal is only encroaching 25 centimeters into the side yard. With respect to the increased driveway width to 5.92 meters, the variance request is minor in nature as there is a significant amount of soft landscaping retained on the property, and the minimum 40% aggregated soft landscaping provision is maintained. In fact, our development is proposing to maintain 44% soft landscaping on the property. You will note in figure 3, which was referred to in our application summary that shows the proposed driveway, that most, if not all, of the existing properties in the neighborhood have similar or even larger driveway widths and sizes. The 5.5 meter maximum driveway width provision for lots with a width of 15 to 18 meters was recently implemented as part of the new infill bylaw provisions, which were recently approved by City Council and are currently under appeal. The purpose of the provision is mainly to ensure that sufficient soft landscaping is provided for infill developments and that the lot is not engulfed by the footprint of the home and hard landscaping. All other performance standards for the zoning bylaw have been met, including lot area and lot width. The variances will, in our opinion, will have no negative impacts on the neighboring properties or the streetscapes and therefore should be considered minor in nature. We are not aware of any objections on this file from the City of Ottawa planner or its partners, Hydro Ottawa and the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. That's the end of my presentation, Madam Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chiarello.
No
Members of the committee, any questions? Yes, Ms. Willis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question with regard to the lot beside, which is becoming an internal lot. Is there any construction activity occurring on that lot as well?
Which lot are you referring to? 1572? Is it to the immediate west?
To the immediate west, yes.
That house has already been constructed and is currently in existence.
And did it require any variances?
Not that I'm aware of, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? I guess I've got one to staff myself then, Mr. Hodgins. So we know that the intent has always been, as Mr. Chiarello actually explained, is that the city is actually trying to, as much as possible, ensure at least the minimum soft landscaping and that kind of thing on a property. But I was surprised that in this case, there was support for the increased width in the driveway because we're already looking at 5.5 meters. Is the city not trying to in fact maximize as much as possible the soft landscaping on some of these properties? And so I guess from that standpoint, I guess, we've heard these arguments all the time. Well, it really, it meets the intent and it, does well. It's, but at the end of the day, are we not really trying to do even better than sort of that standard that we had set some time ago?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair. I believe the intent of these new provisions are in part to maximize the soft landscaping and reduce the negative impacts of vehicular parking on the impact of the streetscape. I think in this case specifically, we took into consideration the overall landscaping on the property in total, including all the soft landscaping in the interior or the corner side yard. I think that was an important factor as well, that there's a new minimum aggregated soft landscaping requirement, which is also exceeded in the front yard, where the driveway reduction is being proposed. So I would agree in the sense that the city is trying to maximize soft landscaping, but in this case, we didn't raise concerns given the proposal with regards to the intent of the bylaw.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hodgins. So I'm going to ask you a question then, Mr. Chiarello. Can you tell me then, so 5.5 meters for a driveway seems to be pretty generous. Can you tell me why you need more?
I think it's just to make it uniform with the sizing of the garage and the width on the front side of the house. It's just so it doesn't.
Do you have that elevation in your presentation? Did we not?
I do not know.
Okay. All right. Everybody else has.
You can see it in if the committee coordinator has diagram 1, which I had sent again. Yep. It's not an elevation, but you'll see the grading plan and you'll see the front side of the house with the size of the driveway.
And I'm not saying it's not okay.
It's that one there. Yeah. So you can see on the north side, just the driveway width.
All right. Okay. It seems to me that you could still meet the bylaw on this without it really taken away from the design of the house. But in any event, anyone else with questions then? Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question with respect to all of the variances that are being proposed here. It strikes me we're only talking about and they are. I give the fact that they are what we would normally call minor, but it strikes me that why is it not possible to reduce the width of the unit by a meter to meet the requirement, and to reduce the depth by 1/4 of a meter, which would meet the requirement. And again, with respect to the driveway, reduce the driveway width. I think we've talked enough about that, but it strikes me that there doesn't appear to be anything particularly onerous about the configuration of this lot and the location that would necessitate a minor variances that are applied for here, that would constrain the ability to develop this property for a very substantial single detached residential dwelling unit. Just wondering why the need for the unit to be this size and require these minor variances.
Sure, and that's a fair comment. It's something that we also I guess reviewed with our client, but basically it came down to the size of the home that the client is looking for, 4-bedroom home, family size, and just what we were able to fit on the lot. And the fact that we wanted to obviously keep outside of the corner site triangle, which was very important for the city from what I understand. Basically what came down to how we had to shift the positioning of the house and just basically the sizing that we were looking for. It is smaller in size than the house to the immediate west, but it is the size that we were looking for.
Mr. White?
Follow up, Madam Chair, if I could. Is that site triangle, has that been dedicated to the city as a result of some consent or something previously granted? Or is it actually just part of the lot?
Not that I'm aware of. I think it's just the city doesn't want corner homes to encroach onto the, I guess, onto the corner frontage of the city property. That's the way I understand it, but perhaps Mr. Hodgins can
I'm just wondering how this
chime in.
How that plays into how this plays into the minor variance requirement.
Mr. Hodgins.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, there's technically two corner site triangles here. One is a 3x3 corner site triangle, which was dedicated to the city as part of the last consent application. So those lands are owned by the city and not included in the landscaping calculations. There is also a 6x6 corner site triangle zoning bylaw requirement as shown on the site plan, and that is a zoning bylaw requirement, so that the additional 3x3 meters is part of the property still. Just nothing can be encroaching in that 6x6 meter triangle.
Madam Chair, it's only in situations where we've had consents or severances on this plan of subdivision that the corner triangles have been taken by the city. I think you mentioned 3x3 corner triangles. In other words, the historical lots there don't have corner triangles dedicated to the city. It's only something that's taken at the time of a severance. Is that correct?
Mr. Hodgins, can you just confirm that?
Yes, I do believe so. I can confirm that it was taken on this lot. I'm not entirely sure what the area with what happened on some of the other lots with corner site triangles, which appear to be dedicated, but I would say overall it looks like most of them do not. And I would assume that that was just a result of the previous subdivision not taking them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ray. All right, I believe that if we're done with the questions for Mr. Chiarello, we're going to go to the public. I don't have anyone registered to speak on this one. So I'm going to make a call out. Anyone in the audience want to speak either for or against this application? Just raise your hand and come forward. All right, I'm not seeing anyone come forward at all on that. So given that, I think we're at the point where we can make a decision. I'm going to ask the committee members before we go there whether anyone has a concern with variance C with regards to the width of the driveway. Is there? Yes, Ms. Willis?
Actually, I do. I don't think that it's a significant variance, but I don't see any reason, aesthetic or otherwise, that the driveway could not be reduced to 5.5 meters. I don't think it jeopardizes the look of the house. There's lots of instances where the driveways don't come right to the edge of the corner of the house. So it's not a big deal for me, but my inkling is to ask that the driveway comply with the 5.5 meters.
All right, thank you. Ms. Markovich.
Yes, I would second that. Actually, I agree with Member Willis. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, okay. Anyone else? Mr. Handel?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump on that train. I agree. I think it's minor, but it's minor to comply as much as it's minor to not. And my tendency in this case would be that I think it should comply.
All right, thank you, Mr. Handel. So I think Mr. Chiarello, sorry, pardon me, is that the committee is not very comfortable with the driveway with the variance C. The rest, I think the committee has no issues with, but for variance C, I think in this case, what we would propose is that we simply remove it, delete it from the application and ask you to submit revised plans if the application is approved. Would that be something you'd be willing to do?
Madam Chair, if we'd be happy to just reduce the size to 5.5 meters. We don't, yeah.
If that's the case, then what we're going to do is we're going to delete on the record, deleting variance C. No longer need for that because we're hearing from the applicant's agent that they will meet the bylaw requirement in that regard. And so we're now dealing with an amended application with only 2 variances, A and B. So that's what the vote's on. We're agreed, so Mr. Chiarello, I just need confirmation that you're in support of that.
Yes, we're in support.
All right. Ms. Willis.
Sorry, just for clarification, does that mean then that we will say the plans as revised to have a driveway width of 5.5 meters?
Yes, I believe that the revised plans would have to come in as well as part of that. Yes. Any issues with that, Mr. Chiarello?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. So then I'm calling a vote by the committee members on the revised application with the deletion of variance C. All those in favor? All right. So, Mr. Chiarello, the revised application is granted unanimously by the committee, and we're going to ask you to get your revised plans into the committee. I'm looking, Mr. Garnett, could you please tell us by when you would need those revised plans?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the revised site plan could be submitted by the end of the week, that would be ideal, as we'll have to reflect that date in the written decision of the committee.
All right, thank you very much. Is that, can that be done, Mr. Chiarello?
Yeah, I don't see that being an issue, Madam Chair. If we do, if there is an issue, we'll communicate, but I don't see that being an issue.
All right, thank you very much. So with that, I believe that concludes your application. Thank you so much for your presentation this evening and for discussing with us some of the issues that we see with it, I guess. And thank you for being able to accommodate and adapt to the committee's concerns.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
All right, thank you. Have a nice evening.
Bye-bye.
All right, with that, we're on to the last 2 items for the evening. Applications 8 and 9 for 1663 and 1665 Bank Street, 1216 Ridgemont Avenue. Looking for Mr. Holtzman.
Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, I can hear you. Mr. Holtzman, I in fact have 2 windows for you.
Well, I wasn't able to get on the first time, so I think I may have ended up on YouTube. Again, this is a little beyond me, so I'm crossing my fingers that I continue to at least stay on 1 or 2.
Okay, well, so the committee is going to get you to do a presentation, but before that, I need to read something to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted on the property to which the application applies for the prescribed amount of time and that the sign was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true? I affirm that to be true, Madam Chair. All right, thank you. So with that, the committee is looking for a brief presentation from you. Okay, if we could start by bringing up the PowerPoint. And just while they're doing that, Mr. Holtzman, I noticed there is a couple of things. The technical amendment. Yes, yeah, well, there's a technical amendment for the area. So just confirm that it's in fact 472.5 instead of 494.5. Is that correct? 474.5. When with the lack of paper prints, when you blow up a PDF, it gets a bit blurry, and I thought I saw a 6 instead of an 8. So it was my error, but the staff report is correct. All right, I've got 472.5. Oh, wait, there's these 2. They don't match. Look at that. Okay, so it is 474.5 for the record. Okay, let's go with that. Yes, the other thing, Mr. Holtzman, before I guess we read a lot of material before we got to the meeting tonight. And my question to you is, do you need a minor variance application at all at this point? To you, Chair, as well as the committee members, we do not. And I think Cameron can outline the city's position on this, but the properties enjoy legal non-complying rights. By virtue of the consent, we don't lose that. And
it took a long time to get to that point. Staff really did some very good work, some very hard investigation, and it came out this morning with that position. Other than that, we would end up with variances, and the unique situation with those would be if variances were even approved, they would still just run with those buildings, and any redevelopment would require us to comply. Same with non-complying rights. So there's really no change to that. And my client and the prospective purchaser are both willing to take on that as the solution here, that the properties, if you agree to the consent and recreate the lots that have been in existence since 1910, then they would enjoy non-complying rights.
So Mr. Holtzman, can we withdraw then the minor variance application?
Yes, my client is as well on this call, and she can also reconfirm that I have their direction to withdraw those associated minor variance applications and just simply deal with the two consents.
All right, Ms. Mansour, can you just confirm that since you're with us this evening?
Yes, I confirm that.
All right, thank you. With that then, for the record, we are withdrawing the minor variance application, which is D08-02-20. I hope I'm saying this right, /A 00364 and D08-02-20/A 00365. So I just wanted to read that into the record. Thanks for your patience on that. So in that case, Mr. Holtzman, we just need a presentation on a consent application.
Okay, great. So if we get back to that PowerPoint, and again, the PowerPoint was prepared and presented, submitted with the minor variances in mind, but it certainly, I believe, makes it much clearer. Of course, the first thing you have to consider is whether consent is the appropriate method to re-subdivide these lands, or is the plan of subdivision or part lot control more appropriate. And I would put to you, and I hope you'll acknowledge and agree that the consent is the right way. So there's the location of the property outlined in blue. Now, you'll see there's a red line that runs north-south through. Of course, it's at the southeast corner of Bank Street, the main arterial on the left side, and then Ridgemont is one of the neighborhood streets that runs east-west. So we're at the southeast corner there, and there's a zoning line. And so the proposed 1663 and 1665 are the two so-called lots. They were original lots. I'll get to that in a moment, that are on Bank Street. They're zoned AM1, subzone 1, with an exception 1913. So there's no issues with use here at all on that. And it has two structures on it. One is a commercial office building, the one with the pointy roof at the corner, and then the other is a restaurant, single story, that has been had many different names. One of the more recent was the Ritz. The other structures is to the east of the red line. That's a property known municipally as 1216 Ridgemont. Most of that lot is zoned R2F, but there's a sliver of land along the west side that also has the AM1 1913 exception zone. That was one of the things that created this to be quite an interesting project for myself, perhaps for Cameron as well, as we went through this over the last 3 or 4 months. So there's that's the subject property, that's the zoning. If we could go to the next slide then, please. So this is a view from Ridgemont, and the structure on the left side of that, the brown brick 2-story, that's the house at 1216 Ridgemont. You can see the detached garage. In behind the garage is a shed. Those structures, by the way, other than the shed, have been in existence since probably circa 1950s. So many, many, many years. Now, the cedar hedge you see right smack in the middle of the photo is essentially where the lot line is proposed to be. You can see a car in the service parking lot. You see the single-story gray building in the back behind that car. That's been a longstanding restaurant. And then the building, the 2-story to the right side, is a 2-story commercial office building. So the intention would be that those two buildings would end up on the Bank Street properties. And then, of course, the house with the detached garage and a shed would be on the residential property. Residential use, of course. Next slide, please. is a photo taken from the Bank Street side. I should point out, there you go. You see the two-story on Bank Street, the single story with a little bit of an addition out front, a little bit of a patio, obviously not in use then or now, and then the two-story behind. I should mention that this property would have access off of both Bank Street, and you would have seen from the previous photo a private approach off of Ridgemont, and then of course the Ridgemont property has its own private driveway. Next slide, please. This is the plan that was registered. Of course, 4M23 outdates all of us, including myself, and this is from 1910, and I didn't highlight because you wouldn't see it, but the properties are basically right in the middle along the east side of Bank Street. You can see Ridgemont has been, well, the original name was scratched out, replaced by Ridgemont, and so we have those two lots that run east-west, and then of course the Ridgemont, I call it the Ridgemont lot, the first one on the east edge of that north-south. So just wanted to demonstrate again, this is over 100 years old. That's when they were subdivided. And only as of 2013, through a tax reorganization within the family, did these properties inadvertently, unintentionally get merged. So that's the purpose of these applications today. Next slide, please. This was a draft reference plan prepared in advance for this particular project. And one of the things that guided us whether we would have any zoning compliance issues or not is to prepare a plan to find out where these number of structures are and then do a test. And this was discussed with staff, Cameron's group, Cameron himself, back in November, December. And then we arrived at the position at that point that in order to subdivide, to bring it into compliance, we would need a series of variances. One for what we thought was one for the 1216 Ridgemont, and then 3 for the resulting Bank Street property. Now that, I put it to you with respect as a moot point now because of the legal non-complying rights direction here. But this was difficult at the time. It was difficult when we applied, and it was difficult, I believe, and you can speak to, of course, Cameron after I finish my presentation, which I'm just about to wrap up. But the issue of the two zonings on the Ridgemont property created uniqueness. It's not the first time, of course not, but it just was very interesting to deal with it. And because accessory structures are treated differently when they're on a residential zone versus when they're on an AM zone, and because this lot had two zones, how did we deal with those? So there's no encroachments, by the way. There would still be setbacks if the consent is created along the line we want. So if you go to the next one, it's a blow up. It'll give you a little bit more indication of where we're going. Okay, so it's a 4-part R plan. I'll start on the east side. Ridgemont is the main part, 98% of it is part 4. And then there's the sliver of land, part 3, which is the part that's zoned to AM1 with the exception. And that would form the resulting Ridgemont lot, which is the one that was there before 2013. And then of course, Bank Street is made up of 2 parts, parts 1 and part 2. So that's what we're asking the committee to approve, and of course, primary and secondary consent. So a client's free to dispose of either one first. However, there is a bona fide purchase and sale agreement to sell parts 1 and part 2 now. Next slide, please. This is just a blow up again, so you can see the structures that lay within. Well, part 3 is the narrow part, but again, with the comfort level of staff that would recognize this as legal non-complying. That's not an issue that this committee has to deal with through associated minor variance applications. I should tell you that the proposed lots comply with the other performance standards, of course, minimum lot area, minimum lot width, and all of the use provisions, of course. I guess the next slide. This one was prepared and you would have seen it in your package. So this was when we were trying to determine one of the potential zoning deficiency issues, and it has to do with the amount of landscaping around a parking lot. So of course, at that time, this was put forward by the surveyor with these calculations, and that what we based one of our items on the minor variance application. But I'm not going to speak to that anymore because it's become a moot point. So again, I just wanted to make sure for the record that the application was revised for the lot to be created on Ridgemont because of that, my poor eyesight, I'm sorry to say. And oh yes, just so you know, we circulated. Well, of course, Sandra and her family her family lives at Ridgemont. They've lived there for forever, and we circulated about 35 notices to the members of the public around. We didn't receive any calls, and to this day, I understand that the city themselves, staying in touch with the coordinator, didn't receive any. So, you know, I don't think there's public concern with this one. And again, to stress that this reestablishes lots that were, for all intents and purposes, created many, many years ago. So that's what I have. Sandra, do you have anything to add at all while we have the floor? Used up almost my 5 minutes.
No, I believe you've covered most of it, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for your time. Again, this has been a family property since the 60s. You know, we made an effort to transfer the property several years ago from an estate to a corporation, and our lawyer admittedly made a mistake by merging the properties, and we only recently discovered during the process of the sale, which is firm, and I'm hoping to resolve this so we can move forward and you know, for the family's sake, my mom's sake, and whatnot. It was simply a mistake. There's no attempt to make any changes other than to sell Bank Street.
Thank you, and thank you, Sandra, and Chair and the committee. When we get a chance to talk about the conditions, we have a comment on one, but I believe that staff have already indicated that they would recommend removing one of the conditions. So I may be premature, but I want to make sure that we get a chance to confirm the conditions if you so feel in agreement to approve the applications. Thank you.
We're going to go to the public portion of the hearing at this point, and then we can come back to the conditions. So I don't have anybody on a speakers list to either speak for or against the application, but here's an opportunity for anyone who wants to come forward at this point. I'm not seeing anybody come forward, so I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing on this application. Mr. White, your hand's up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question concerning the question of the merging of title. These were originally and are, I mean, part of them are lots on a registered plan of subdivision, plan M280 or M23. 480, 479, 480, and 481. I'm just not quite clear on the issue here. Can those not be conveyed separately because they're on a plan of subdivision? Maybe perhaps the problem is the house or some of the buildings straddle lot lines and there has to be a lot line adjustment. Is that part of the problem here?
Is that to me, Madam Chair?
Yes, please answer the question.
You can convey whole lots on a plan of subdivision, but there's that narrow strip of land that, and Cameron can speak to how that was created, but that's not a whole lot on a plan of subdivision. So that avenue isn't available to us, is my understanding.
Madam Chair, could I get some clarification on the situation there? Because I'm just not clear on why the lots can't be conveyed as lots on a registered plan, other than maybe the fact that one of the buildings or some of the buildings straddle one of the original old lot lines. And that means that we have to do the sliver of land that we're talking about to consolidate with one or the other lots.
All right, Mr. Hodgins, I think you've heard the concern.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the issue is regarding, it appears there was a previous lot line adjustment shown as part 3 on the reference plan. So unfortunately, I don't have much details on when it occurred, but through our investigation into why the residential property had some split zoning onto it. It appears that there was a lot line adjustment in the past, which transferred the 60 centimeter chunk of part 3 from the commercial properties to the residential. And that's why, from my understanding, they are not blocks on a plan of subdivision as a result of that transfer as seen here.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes, Mr. Holtzman.
Yeah, I believe that was probably done so that because those structures were built encroaching into across that lot line that existed at that time. So they then went lot line adjustment and shifted things over so that those structures would be within the property on Ridgemont.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that makes sense. I'm just wondering, do we have a story, a history on that lot line adjustment situation?
Through you, Madam Chair, the information available in the city's records is quite limited on this lot line adjustment. I suspect likely just due to the age or the time of when it was done. Typically, we have records of application numbers and those things in our system for lot line adjustments and other applications. But on all these properties, we don't have the information detailed on the lot line adjustment, only through our looking at the transactions in the zoning, where we realized that the lot line didn't line up with the M zoning, and it looked like it was, or it appears quite like it was a result of a lot line adjustment.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, I believe that, am I correct in saying that the garage and the shed that are associated with the house actually encroach into the original lots to the west? I mean, in other words, they're not located on the residential lot, totally located on the original lot to the east. So there, at some point there was a lot line adjustment here that's created the merger problem, really.
It looks like it. I think that's the explanation I heard from.
I think it's cleared up. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, all right, so Mr. Holtzman, I think before we go to the vote on your consent application, you raised some issues with regards to some conditions. Now's your chance.
Yes, originally the staff report, which I believe you have, and it had 4 conditions, but in dealing with Cameron over the last number of days, I believe he's sent an email into the committee suggesting that condition number 3, dealing with the evidence of grading and drainage plan, is no longer necessary. We ask you to strike that as a requirement. The other 3 are fine.
All right, I have no problems with that whatsoever. Anybody on the committee? All in agreement? Yep, we're striking it. Okay, sounds good. So I just had, I think there was one other thing then, Mr. Holtzman, I think we need to do, this would be consistent with what I've been doing all along, which is to ensure that the notice reflects a correct statement. So in your notice, we are still referring then to the minor variance applications. I'd like to amend that so that it no longer says that. So in my opinion, we can go straight to a statement that says that this application is not, or this property is not subject to any other or applications under the Planning Act. I don't recall from memory exactly what that statement says, but I would suggest that that's what we need to do with this notice.
I would agree.
Okay, all right, let's do that for the record as well. And okay, consent, all those in favor? All right, so the application is granted by the committee and it's unanimous. We have a revised set of conditions to delete the grading and drainage plan. And with that, the application is granted. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you. Our pleasure. Bye-bye.
All right, bye now.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I need a motion to adjourn. Ms. Willis, seconded by Ms. Markovich, beat you to it, Mr. Handel.